Welcome to Prophecies of the Middle East. My name is Daniel Vallis, and I am the founder and editor of InformedChristians.com, a website devoted to providing discernment from a Christian perspective. Today we're going to look at three very important prophecies regarding the Middle East region, specifically Egypt, Syria, and Israel. When we look on the map, we see that Egypt, Israel, and Syria are neighbors. Therefore, major events in one country will have an impact on its surrounding neighbors. While Scripture does not explicitly state such, it does appear that these three separate prophecies are concurrently moving toward occurring at the same time in a domino fashion. We don't know what will trigger it, but an attack on Israel, whether by the Syrian government or a false flag by the rebels, will bring instant retaliation by Israel, which may quickly escalate. Initially, the surrounding nations may try to take advantage of the fog of war and simultaneously attack Israel. Once this happens, the proverbial kid gloves are going to come off. First of all, we will start with Egypt. Egypt has recently undergone several changes in government in the past 2 years, both of them through uprisings and military coups. Currently, the military is basically in charge, with a good percentage of support by the people. But there are still severe divisions among the Egyptians over various political parties, especially the Muslim Brotherhood. The country is still in political turmoil with the various groups trying to gain popular support. This is significant because Isaiah 19 prophecy starts out with Egypt erupting into all-out civil war, which the country is very close to. We're going to read through the chapter and point out several significant details and notes. Verse 1 reads, "The burden of Egypt. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it." This verse tells us that the Lord's judgment on Egypt will be swift, and will not only affect the political and physical aspects of the nation, but also the spiritual nature of Egypt as well. Its predominant idol is the moon god worship of Islam. Just as when God judged Egypt at the Red Sea crossing, he also used a cloud, Exodus 14:20-21. Now in this prophecy, Egypt's judgment will likewise be very swift and complete. Verse 2, "And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom." Civil war will erupt, likely political and sectarian division. This will spiral out of control. Notice that it starts as differences, whether ideological, political, religious, or all three, between people. Then it spreads to whole cities, then with spillover into regional conflicts. Verse 3, "And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols, and to the charmers, and to them that have familiar spirits, and to the wizards." The Muslims in Egypt will call out to their moon god, but to no avail. Apparently they will also resort to other pagan means in desperation as well. Just as when God demonstrated the powerlessness of the Egyptian gods with the plagues back in Exodus, so will he do again. Verse 4, "And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts." After a period of war, it appears that the Antichrist will eventually subjugate Egypt, Daniel 11:40-45. This could also refer to an intermediate dictator that deals harshly during this time of civil war. "And the waters shall fail from the sea, and the rivers shall be wasted and dried up, and they shall turn the rivers far away. And the brooks of defense shall be emptied and dried up, the reeds and flags shall wither." Here we are starting to see specific details that we should be looking for. If we look at the map, we'll see the Nile River running through Egypt toward the Mediterranean Sea at the north. Almost all of Egypt's civilization is built around this river and the river delta. You can see how vitally important this river is in the desert country of Egypt. The events in this verse and following appear to be the result of abnormal events disrupting the water flow, not related to temporary or normal dam construction. Apparently, any industry, fishing, agricultural, textile, industrial, etc., economic enterprises related to the river, and perhaps the Suez Canal, will be ruined because of the disruption. It also appears that the changes to the river will be permanent. Complete economic and industrial collapse. Egypt, which is already dependent on foreign aid, will basically self-destruct economically when its water resources are gone. The paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouth of the brooks, and everything sown by the brooks shall wither, be driven away, and be no more. The fishers also shall mourn, and all they that cast angle into the brooks shall lament, and they that spread nets upon the waters shall languish. Moreover, they that work in fine flax, and they that weave networks, shall be confounded, and they shall be broken in the purposes thereof, all that make sluices and ponds for fish. Notice that verse 10 indicates that perhaps the dam and irrigation works are destroyed and rendered useless. This map shows the location of the two main Aswan dams controlling the Nile River. One can easily see the importance of this strategic area and its implications for the rest of the nation downriver. If Egypt attacks Israel in some form or fashion, Israel may find it easiest just to knock these dams out of commission, effectively cutting Egypt's hydroelectric power off at the knees and redirecting their armed forces' focus towards civilian and situation control. Depending on what type of weapons are used, nuclear, tactical nukes for example, the damage and downwash may carve a diversionary flow of water away from the usual Nile course. Egypt depends entirely on the Nile for irrigation. The Aswan High Dam currently regulates the Nile and creates a fishing and factory industry in the Lake Nasser right behind the dam. It also provides about 15% of Egypt's electricity, with most of the water released by the dam diverted to irrigation canals. Surely the princes of Zoan are fools, the counsel of the wise counselors of Pharaoh is become brutish. How say ye unto Pharaoh, I am the son of the wise, the son of ancient kings? God will use these events to demonstrate the foolishness of Egypt's wisdom and strength. When God's judgment is turned against any nation, all the wisdom, counsel, weaponry, power, etc., is to no avail. Where are they? Where are thy wise men? And let them tell thee now, and let them know what the Lord of hosts hath purposed upon Egypt. The princes of Zoan are become fools, the princes of Noph are deceived. They have also seduced Egypt, even they that are the stay of the tribes thereof. The Lord hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. Neither shall there be any work for Egypt, which the head or tail, branch or rush may do. Here we see that vast unemployment and economic collapse will be common. In our modern vernacular, we would also say they were affected from the head to tail. The Nile River is the lifeblood of Egypt. Without it, Egypt will be a mere economic shadow of itself. In that day shall Egypt be like unto women, and it shall be afraid and fear because of the shaking of the hand of the Lord of hosts, which he shaketh over it. There is going to be much fear in Egypt as they watch their lifeblood, the Nile, dry up, civil war erupt, and regional conflicts ignite. From a human perspective, it will be the end of their world as they know it, and their pagan gods will not help them. And the land of Judah shall be a terror unto Egypt. Every one that maketh mention thereof shall be afraid in himself, because of the counsel of the Lord of hosts, which he hath determined against it. Apparently, part of the regional spillover results in conflict with Israel, to which Israel retaliates with crushing force. The Egyptians have already witnessed in recent past history how Israel has defeated them, and they know that they are no match. This verse implies that a large part of the terror upon Egypt is a result of Israel's retaliation. Perhaps part of it involves the bombing of the Aswan dams. In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan, and swear to the Lord of hosts. One shall be called the City of Destruction. Apparently the regional conflict will also result in Israel capturing more territory. One city does appear to have been the site of particular devastating attack during the conflicts. The prophecy starts with the civil war, But God reveals that the results of this turmoil will, over a period of time, result in Egypt's turning to the Lord, apparently during the time of the millennial reign of Christ. In that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. And it shall be for a sign, and for a witness unto the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they shall cry unto the Lord because of the oppressors, and he shall send them a Saviour, and a great one, and he shall deliver them. And the Lord shall be known to Egypt, and the Egyptians shall know the Lord in that day, and shall do sacrifice and oblation. Yea, they shall vow a vow unto the Lord, and perform it. And the Lord shall smite Egypt, he shall smite and heal it. And they shall return even to the Lord, and he shall be entreated of them, and shall heal them. In that day shall there be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrian shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptian into Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. In that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed be Egypt my people, and Assyria the work of my hands, and Israel mine inheritance. So for us today, as we look at the unfolding division in Egypt, we should not be surprised to see it fester and grow, eventually sparking civil war throughout Egypt's cities, and then spilling over and affecting its neighbor Israel. In the midst of the civil war, the Nile River will be cut off somehow, decimating Egypt's economic and political power. Secondly, we come to Syria, the northern neighbor of Israel. Syria has been fighting a vicious civil war for 2 years, devastating many cities and displacing millions of people. Recently, a chemical gas attack killed several hundred, and drawing harsh condemnation from various nations, and bringing the U.S. to the point of attacking the Syrian government with cruise missiles. Interestingly, Syria is a close ally with Russia. Tense negotiations have so far held off an attack on Syria, but it remains to see how effective it is or if the rebel opposition forces will act brashly. Currently, there are numerous American carrier fleets and other warships in the area ready to launch an attack on Syria if the negotiations and chemical weapons disarmament fails. Isaiah chapter 17 covers the prophecy of Damascus, the capital city. For sake of time, we will just look at some of the key verses. The burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city. It shall be a ruinous heap. Damascus is one of the oldest cities in the world and the capital of Syria, but it will be made a pile of ruin. At that day shall a man look to his Maker, and his eyes shall have respect to the Holy One of Israel. And he shall not look to the altars, the work of his hands, neither shall respect that which his fingers have made, either the groves or the images. The events surrounding the destruction of Damascus will cause them and many more to forsake their idols, such as Islam, and recognize the true God. Apparently, the destruction will be so severe that it will be obvious their gods and idols are powerless. This could also broadly imply that their holy sites in other areas, such as Mecca, were also cut down. In that day shall his strong cities be as a forsaken bow, and an uppermost branch which they left because of the children of Israel, and there shall be desolation. Apparently, Damascus won't be the only Syrian city destroyed, although Damascus might receive the brunt and worst of the damage. This verse also implies that the Israelites are involved, most likely as the ones inflicting the ruin. And behold, at eventide trouble, and before the morning he is not. This is the portion of them that spoil us, and the lot of them that rob us. This verse is very specific that there will be trouble, strife, possibly escalation of a simmering conflict at sunset, and that by the next morning Damascus will not exist anymore, implying nuclear strike with quick devastation. Because this war is playing for keeps, apparently there will be no holds barred, there will be massive casualties, and the war will be very decisive and over relatively quickly. Because of the quick retaliations and the small theater of war, there will probably be very little outside involvement beyond what is nearby in the Mediterranean, Persian Gulf, and the Red Sea. U.S. involvement, if any, will likely be limited to missile shipments and resupply. Because of what is at stake, Israel will probably use its nuclear cards right at the onset. The confusion and fog of war will probably mean that outsiders won't have a clear idea of what is going on till the decisive blows have already been meted out. Finally, Israel. Situated right between Egypt and Syria, Israel appears that it may be facing a battle that it has to quickly and decisively fight on two fronts. Most likely more. Psalm 83 describes a local confederacy of Israel's immediate neighbors that moves against Israel sometime after it has been reestablished. According to Psalm 83, the goal will be to completely erase Israel and create a new Palestine state. This prophecy, in light of the others we've looked at, seems to describe the large picture, with apparent, concurrent, and following prophetic events related. This may happen before or immediately after the rapture. Psalm chapter 83 describes what will occur. A song or psalm of Asaph. Keep not thou silence, O Lord. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. While mostly known as a psalm writer, Asaph was also a prophet during the time of King David. 2 Chronicles 29:30 and 1 Chronicles 25:2. For lo, thine enemies make atonement, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. Israel's enemies form a confederacy against her and what she represents, the people of God. The reference to thy hidden ones may imply those children of Israel that will be sealed during the time of the tribulation, Revelation 7:4. The enemy's goal is apparently to completely destroy Israel and take their land. This goes beyond just a military campaign. This is a war of ethnic and sectarian hatred. Even today, it is no secret of this region's animosity toward Israel. Verse 6. The groups listed are very specific in their day. Some referred to by the people, and some are referred to the geographic area. In our time, they have very close majority equivalents with a few others intermingled. For example, the tabernacles of Edom are the descendants of Esau, Genesis 36:9. Today they would be the Palestinians and southern Jordanians, that area. The tents imply refugee status or without a specific homeland. For the Ishmaelites, Ishmael was the father of the Arabs, the Saudis. Moab would include Palestinians and central Jordanians. And the Hagarenes are referred to by Hagar's name. They are the Egyptians. Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Today, the region of Gebal can be associated with the Hezbollah and northern Lebanese area. Ammon would be some Palestinians and northern Jordanians. Amalek would be the Arabs of the Sinai area. And the Philistines, Philistia, that would be the Gaza Strip area. And as an armed political group, it would probably likely be Hamas today. Tyre, this area would encompass the southern Lebanese and Hezbollah groups there. Asher also is joined with them. They have Hopan, the children of Lot, Selah. Asher, or Assyria, the Assyrians, probably largely northern Syrians and northern Iraqis. That would be in the area of Assyria. The children of Lot are Ammon and Moab, both who have already been mentioned, that are in the Jordan area. And today Jordan has a very weak army, and thus it has to join up with another to be worth mentioning almost. When we look on the map, we see the current political boundaries of today. But when we overlay the biblical cities, regions, and peoples, we get an idea of whom Asaph is referring to. Syria may be the linchpin since it commands allies in Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran. If Syria launches some form of an attack on Israel, others may join in. The neighbors may attack in unison against their common enemy. It is definitely worth noticing, however, that Damascus and Syria are not mentioned in the invasion of Israel. The Assyrians that are referenced are most likely the Kurdish armies in the Syrian north in the area of ancient Assyria. Damascus, one of the oldest cities and capitals in the world, is not even mentioned. Perhaps the decimation of Damascus and surrounding key cities is what triggers the others to attack Israel. Verses 9 through 12. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin, at the brook of Kison, which perished at Endor, they became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb, yea, all their princes as Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, Let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. These verses imply that this confederacy will be completely destroyed and taken over for spoil, just like other ancient armies who attacked Israel. Apparently, Israel not only defeats this confederacy, but also spoils them and seizes new territory. The armament, wealth, infrastructure, mineral and oil resources, etc., will make Israel a power to be reckoned with. It will also probably give Israel control over the Red Sea and partial control over the Strait of Hormuz, through which a large portion of oil trade flows. It also gives Israel control of the crossroad of the world, where 3 continents intersect, and it's a powerful geopolitical area. Now, the first stage may happen very quickly once started, and it might also stretch out several weeks. Israel might not take full possession of the attacking countries, and perhaps new borders might be declared under a peace treaty brokered by the recently emerging Antichrist, Daniel 9:27. This may more easily facilitate the Jewish return to Israel out of all the nations, filling the land and enabling them to hold and settle the vast new territory. During this time of safety and prosperity may be when the temple is rebuilt, Daniel 9:27. Esoteric influences under the false guise of being Jewish may help coordinate behind the scenes in preparing the way for Antichrist's later actions in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. While the Bible does not lay out this detail, here is a thesis of possible related and concurrent events and activity that may unfold. Thesis number 1, the Egyptian civil war spills over into war against Israel. Israel attacks the dams, rediverting or stopping up the Nile. Combination of events fulfills Isaiah 19. This could be a spark for the invasion of Israel. Thesis number 2, the Arab nations take advantage of the war to launch their Confederate efforts against Israel. Damascus is destroyed for psychological and moral impact. Thesis number 3, Muslim holy sites are hit for psychological impact, delivering a massive demoralizing effect in the midst of this battle. This would also include the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Verses 13 through 15. O my God, make them like a wheel, as the stubble before the wind, as the fire burneth the wood, and as the flame setteth the mountains on fire, so persecute them with thy tempest, and make them afraid with thy storm. The prophet pleads that the Lord will confound their enemies, make them run in circles, similar to a tumbleweed blown about in the desert. Just as fire destroys wood, and a wildfire wreaks havoc, so this war will turn on Israel's enemies to their utter and irreparable destruction. Using the imagery of the cloud spoken of in the first verse, the prophet pleads for their enemies to be afraid when they see God's hand of destruction loom over them. Verses 16 through 18. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. Yea, let them be put to shame and perish, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the Most High over all the earth. It appears that this event will have multiple possible outcomes: the shaming of Islam and the refocusing of Israel on their God. These events may also be the catalyst that leads to the conversion of thy hidden ones during the tribulation. We can definitely see how, with all 3 prophecies stating that their goal is to shame their idols and false gods, that Islam in the Middle East is about to take some serious hits in credibility. It appears that during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, aside from the initial attacks and devastation and recovery, that Israel will enjoy a relative time of prosperity, power, and growth, while other nations are going through wars and fightings of the tribulation. However, 3.5 years after the signing of the covenant with Israel, the Antichrist breaks the treaty and defiles the temple, setting himself up as God. He now also essentially conquers the rest of the world and becomes world leader. Daniel 9:27. Ezekiel 38 and 39 then describes how a confederacy made of different nations than the first confederacy moved to attack Israel. The prophecy mentions that at this time, Israel is in the midst of the promised land, a much larger portion than the present-day state, and that they dwell safely, not closely surrounded by all hostile nation-states, and that they have acquired incredible wealth. When Russia and her allies move to attack, other nations ask if the move is to plunder and spoil this new resource-rich nation. The reason Russia needs allies is because Israel now has much more armament and resources to sustain much larger battles. Many of these surrounding nations have been negatively affected by the incredible regional power shift from the First Confederacy. Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 tell us that this confederacy will be destroyed by God himself through fire, hailstone, pestilence, etc. It will take 7 months to bury the dead. Ezekiel 39:12. Then, later at the end of the tribulation time period, about 3 years later, the world armies will meet in the valley of Megiddo in northern Israel. Revelation 14:20, 16:16. Christ then returns to earth. The Antichrist and false prophet are cast alive into the lake of fire. Revelation 19:20. The armies are destroyed with just the word out of Christ's mouth. Revelation 19:21. And that starts the millennial reign of Christ with Jerusalem as capital. We have looked at the 3 different prophecies and how they apparently will occur concurrently with some overlap. Here's a list of some of the notable events that will mark the fulfillment of each of these prophecies. As we watch the events unfolding in the news and the groundwork and many forces already moved into position, it is only a short matter of time till our world sees these prophecies quickly unfold, either just before the rapture or shortly thereafter. Maranatha.